Hello everybody, it's me, the Hero Teacher, and today in this video we are writing a Band 9 report for a table question. And we do know that table questions are a little bit difficult for candidates to write because of the sheer number of data, number of percentages or proportions that you see in a question, but obviously there is a way to do it in a much better way. And here, let's quickly analyze the question. It's about transport mode in 3 different years: 2000, 2010, and 2020. And I've got 5 different modes: car, bus, train, bicycle, and walking. Well, when you see like 3 columns, 3 years, and each represented with a percentage, totally we've got 15 numbers here, 15 percentages. It looks scary, and I do understand it, but you should know that the question asks us only select and report the main features, which means you don't have to write about all these numbers if you don't feel like it. We just need to look for patterns that help us understand it. So before we write, I just want you to pause the video and quickly review the numbers you see here from the highest to the lowest, so that you basically get the idea of what happens in these years and how people choose to travel to work and by which transport means they prefer. And it is very, very, very clear that car in 2000 was 52%, which is the highest. And in the same car branch, or in the same car mode, transport mode, sorry, it is 38% in 2020. So you basically need to analyze all these numbers before starting to write, and they'll all make sense. Now, I want you to pause the video, check out the numbers, and then come back for writing the introduction. Now, in introduction, as you know, I do not love to completely paraphrase the question prompt. What I want is to basically write it in a way that I feel quite genuine. And it's going to be: the table compares the proportions of commuters who traveled to work by 5 different means of transport in a UK city in the years 2000, 2010, and 2020, or 2020. So introduction basically takes around a minute to complete, and I urge you candidates to not spend more than 2 minutes on that, because introduction basically is how you understand the question, and I don't want you to immediately paraphrase it. Okay, so the second paragraph is about writing the overview, and we know that overview's got 2 sentences, and it's about the main patterns of the question. We do not write numbers, we do not display precise data in overview, because the purpose of the paragraph is to talk about the patterns. And here, what I see is that car basically was the most preferred mode of transport in all years, and it actually reduced, but it was still the most favorite mode of transport for commuters traveling to work. And then what I see is about train and bicycle, which increased. Look, I've got car, bus, walking decreasing, but train and bicycle both increased. And I could say it was a substantial increase, because train increased around twofold, from 12% to 24%, and bicycle from 6% to 15%. These both are substantial increases. Now, let me write my overview. And as you know, I like to go simply. So overall, the car was the most popular means of commuting in all 3 years, despite becoming what happened. Actually, it got reduced. So I need to say it in my overview: less steadily actually, because it was studied, it was not sharp, 52 to 45 and then 38. So like 7% each decade. So steadily less common over time. Yes, I've completed my first part of the overview mentioning the most favorite or preferred mode of transport traveling to work. Then I am going to talk about train and bicycle. So, because these two increased and bus and walking, on the other hand, decreased. So, basically, you could say that car, bus, walking, they all decrease. Yes, that's true. But I had to kind of separate car from the rest of the modes because car was by far in all given years the most favored or preferred mode of transport for traveling to work. Now, let's continue. In contrast, the train and the bicycle, bicycle both grew considerably. Sorry for my typo. It happens a lot to me. Popularity. Yep. While the remaining ones, what are they? The remaining modes were, if I'm mistaken, it was bus and walking. Remaining modes, what happened to them? Either declined slightly or changed very little. And that's also true because if we check bus, it actually reduced by 5% in 2 decades and walking reduced by 2% again in 2 decades. Now, it's time to go for our body paragraphs, and we're going to write 2 body paragraphs for this table. And when you choose your body paragraphs, when you write your body paragraphs, you definitely need to make sure that one body paragraph has a central idea. So the pattern in one body paragraph needs to be consistent in all 3 sentences. Otherwise, you are going to lose points in coherence and cohesion. So you cannot just mix data and call it a body paragraph. It has to be logical. So one body paragraph talks about one sort of pattern or one type of pattern, whatever you call it. Now, when we look at the table, what we see is that there are 2 patterns that we can obviously see. One is a decreasing pattern, the modes that lost their share over the years, whereas the other one is an increasing trend. So car, bus, and walking will be the central idea for my first body paragraph because they all decreased, they all lost their percentages, while train and bicycle actually increased. The percentage of people using train and bicycle for traveling to work increased. Now, I will mention car, bus, and walking in my first body paragraph, and let's get started. In 2000, over half of all commuters, which is 52%, traveled to work by car, but this share fell markedly to 45% in 2010, and then to just 38%. No, not 28, 38% by 2020. So my first sentence is ready, and I mentioned numbers about the car. And let's move on. Travel by bus followed a similar downward path, decreasing gradually from 20% to 15% across 2 decades. Yep. Now we've got the second sentence, and yes, just like the car, bus also lost its share, not as dramatically, but 5% is still some sort of a similarity that I had to mention. And the final sentence will be the proportion of people who walked to work also edged down slightly. Is that true? Yes, because from 10% to 8%, it's slight decrease, but it is decrease from 10% to 8%, remaining relatively minor mode throughout the period. Well, I am done with my first paragraph, and I've mentioned car, bus, and walking, and they all followed a similar pattern. They all decreased over the 2-decade period, and I showed the similarity. So that was what actually is required by the task. Now, in the second body paragraph, I'm going to talk about train and bicycle, which actually increased. That the commuters chose train and bicycle to commute to work more and more over the 2-decade period. Let's get started. By contrast, so the reason why I'm using by contrast is because this one is a downward pattern, but this one is going to be an upward pattern. So by contrast is a nice word, nice actually phrase to connect the contradiction between two paragraphs. Commuting by train rose substantially, doubling from 12% in 2000 to 24% in 2020, when it became the second most popular option. Is that true? Yes, of course it is true, because we know that 2020 the most preferred one was car, 38%, but train became the second, which is a massive step. And it is worth mentioning these changes, like which became the first one, which became the second most preferred option or popular option. These are going to help you score higher and higher, because you are actually meeting the task requirement by making these relevant comparisons. Cycling saw an even sharper proportional increase, climbing from 6% to 15% over the same period. Yep. So I'm done with cycling, because from 6 to 15, this is an increase, and this is a similar pattern to train. And my second sentence also stays under the umbrella of the central idea of my paragraph, which is about the increase in modes of transport. As a result, so that's my final center, these two modes together accounted for almost 2/5 of all journeys to work by 2020, compared with less than a fifth in 2000. And that would be it. That would be the final sentence. And that is true because in 2020, 24% plus 15% will make it 39%, which is almost 40. But in 2000, they were just under 20% at 18%. So this is a nice sentence to add, showing how much these two actually increased. And here it is, a Band 9 cable report that you guys have seen me writing. I'd like you to practice these sentences, try to even copy the sentence structures and how I kind of talk about the data that's necessary to be written. And hopefully you'll also get a very high band score from task 1. Thank you very much. Stay tuned and see you in next videos.